Latitude 0, longitude 0. Speaking from the center of the world, Ghana. This is where we are. This is the center of Pan-Africanism. Moving black people forward, uniting us on the same platform, telling the stories that concerns us. Boom! Zo TV talking points. Do not change the dial. Stay tuned. Latitude 0, longitude 0. Speaking from the center of the world. The country of the warrior king, Ghana. That's where we are now. Yeah, today is going to be a different day. Zo TV is coming back in a very unique style. And 7-8 years ago, we had a very serious conversation with one doctor from University of Ghana. We are back again, and we are taking the conversation onto a higher level. But before we take the conversation to a higher level, I'm gonna do something small because this is a house. This is a Zo TV house, and anytime that somebody visiting your house, you you share a little bit of a drink, and we're gonna toast to the ancestors. So we have something small in the house, all the way from northern part of Ghana, Pito, and we're gonna toast that to the ancestors before we start our conversation. Yeah. My man. Yes. Are we toasting to the ancestors? So what do we say? You are the painful man, man.
Senior, why a former ye paya, me say, baby. Also, Anka Mediano, never can dear, Rebecca. Was there what the guy cast on my friend Dan. I also Pito, I will an of 400 Yefrano. Inti Anka Rebecca so tune for a riding young upon Cherupon Kwame. Your children and a monson. As I say, I'm putting on my audio, Amu, I was on my adrenaline day, the Mirfedie. A bottom of some dogs and into me, bombarding Baco. Now, say for Baco, dear, from Yana, Nano Broquadao, and Damte Ajimai, a Sujubi, as a waffle, as a Jufo. We now free at Tifiana for a piano to a Muna Mamma Jumonsai, Nana Dean, and I say, and a party of the moon. Nipa Bonifo Bianca or Anka Obetria sign, or Jan Shina as a Funyanas and Anka Baco. When I saw Madame, Monsieur and I,
Wow. Yeah, I told you that we're back, and we're back in a unique style. You can't find this anywhere. This is Zo TV. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. Stay tuned. Don't change the station. My man, I want you to introduce yourself. Because if I want to introduce you, I think I will make a mistake. So introduce yourself.
Yeah. You're from me. Oh, it's English?
Yes.
So I'm known as Obinfo, which is cheat still, but Obinfo that translates to professor. Mm-hmm. But I always prefer Obinfo to professor because that's our own language. And it comes from the root verb bin, which is to be well cooked. Okay. The idea is that when you first go into the pot, like ntombre, it's still raw, it's not well cooked, but the longer it stays in the pot, eventually it comes to bin, which is to be well cooked. Yeah. So the idea is to be skilled, and to become skilled at something, it means that you've been inside of it for quite some time. So that's the Obinfo, but that is the term that's used for professor in Chi. Okay. So you are Professor Obadele Kambon. Obinfo Obadele Kambon. So I'm the founder of Abibitumi. I'm the son of Nana Kamal Kambon and Nana Mawia Kambon. My father, Nana Kamal Kambon, passed away recently. We'll be doing a conference in his honor. That will be September 6th through the 8th, the Abibitumi conference on Black Power. You attended the first one? Yes, I did. I was there. We're very glad to see you there. Yeah, I was there. And beyond that, I'm the husband of Akala Kambon. That is my glorious, illustrious, and praiseworthy wife. Okay. The mother of our 5 children. Ama, Kweku, Akosia, Efia, and Nanaya.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I also am an associate professor at the University of Ghana in the Institute of African Studies.
So you work at the University of Ghana. If anybody is watching us now, when you roll our Zo TV channel back 7-8 years ago, I was at the University of Ghana interviewing him. I think that was our early days of YouTube. And since then, everybody has grown. He has become professor. I don't know what I have become, but my story will also come through slowly. Anyway, today's conversation is going to be different. We are going to be talking about African spirituality. But I have a question to ask you. Let's assume that you wake up tomorrow morning and you become the president of Ghana. What would be your first thing you would like to change?
The first thing I would like to change is I would like to abolish the neo-colonial borders that were established that even make Ghana what it is. As you know, before it was Ghana, it was the Gold Coast. And all of those borders, for the most part, there was a dispute over German land after, they lost the war. But, for the majority, for the most part, those borders are the borders that were established at the Berlin Conference.
Okay.
And they are not ours, and they give us these imaginary identities that are very fragmentary in many ways. Whereas in classical times, we used to see ourselves as black people, and we call ourselves black people. That is in classical Kemet, which translates to land of black people. And we call ourselves Kemetiu, which is black people. And we actually brought that to bear in our living, in that we kept non-black people out of that land. So there are texts after texts about the walls that we built to keep them out and how we drove them out. That's when we saw ourselves as black people. But now we have these neo-colonial fragmentary, borders, and it means that you have these imaginary identities that's called a Ghanaian, for example. Like a Nigerian, for example.
So you like to break all the borders?
That's one thing.
And see,
but not necessarily all of the borders, because there needs to remain a border between the lands of black people and the lands that used to be the lands of black people, but that are currently occupied by our very first colonial enemies, the Arabs. So that border not only needs to be, put there, it needs to remain. It also needs to be fortified, and we also need to reclaim the land from the land that's currently occupied by our Arab non-black enemies.
So let's flip it. Let's flip it to America. If you wake up in America and you become president in America tomorrow morning, what would be your first thing you would like to change over there?
We would find some way to deal with the so-called white people who are there. I don't know if we'll go fully into all of the things that I would implement in terms of my policy for the TV, because I know that you are on YouTube, and a lot of the people who I would be speaking about and against are the ones who maintain your platform. So if I start talking too much, you'll find out that Zo TV is gone, and then you will have to be on a BB2Me, which is why we have to have our own platforms in the first place, so that we can actually say what we want to say and what needs to be said. But that's bb2metv.com for those who are interested.
Boom, boom, boom. Zo TV is alive, Zo TV is back, and Zo TV is not going anywhere. This is going to be high-level reasoning, high-level talk concerning we as black people. I call it Pan-Africa Zo TV talking point, Afrocentric vibes. So I wanted to take my mind on a small little journey before we get to the topic, but I've been seeing on different network now that a lot of people have been talking about African spirituality. African spirituality. It's like it's lingering around, which is also means that a lot of Africans are waking up. What is African spirituality in your view? What's African spirituality?
So this is a term that we use to try to encompass what it is that we live and what it is that we do and what it is that we are. Now, if you look at our conception of the reason why we're here on the planet, the idea is for you to fulfill your nkrabia. So the nkrabia, they often translate that as mission, but it comes from...
Or destiny.
Or destiny.
Okay.
Now, it comes from kra, which is to say farewell, and then bia, which is the manner in which you said farewell. Mm-hmm. The idea is that everyone has an okra that comes from onyame. Mm-hmm. So that okra, it comes with its own destiny, it comes with its own mission, it comes with its own purpose, its own reason for being. So the very reason for you to be on the planet is for you to fulfill your nkrabia. And there's a proverb that says, Obia nkrane nyame boni, that no one said farewell to onyame in a bad way. This means that people have destinies that are to be fulfilled, and that the idea is that the human being is essentially good. So in order to fulfill your nkrabia, the idea is that the destiny, so when we say destiny, the idea is destination.
Okay.
The place that you're going.
Yeah.
And the place that you're going is to become an ancestor. And it's not the individualistic thing that you find, for example, in Christianity, in Islam, what they call Islam, in all of these Eurasian religions. Is that not only are you supposed to become an ancestor, you're supposed to assist others so they too can become ancestors.
Okay.
So
does this cut across the entire continent? So say
throughout space,
we have
energy,
54 countries in Africa, and so this spiritual system that we're talking about and using the Kra as a base, is it the same like if you go to, say Uganda, or you go to Congo, or you go to Kenya? Is it the same, or does it change? Does it change hands that much? Is there much differences between the spiritual systems?
So the foundation is the same for black people.
Okay.
For non-black people, of course, they are on the same thing of they want to get out of the world which is secular, which is sinful and so forth, so that they can go to paradise and get virgins and all those things. So it's basically the same equivalency of like the heaven thing. Their idea is that everything is sinful, there's original sin, and you're supposed to extract yourself out of the sin and go to heaven. So all of those things are just different variations on the same theme, which is one of fundamental alienation, being alienated from the world. The world is bad, so you have to alienate yourself and separate yourself and so forth. But for us as black people, the idea is to become ancestors, which is why you see in all of our various traditions, we pour libation, and the libation is poured to the ancestors. So as we're striving to become ancestors, there are two major things that are required to do so. One is what's called bo brapa, which is to live a ethical and moral life. Subaimpa, and again, that is to say that you have good character. And for those things, as you live that out in your life, this is how you're able to become an ancestor, or as we say, a grand ancestor. And then once you're doing that, this is, how we are fulfilling our nkrabia. Now, we can contrast that to Christian sanity. So in Christian sanity, your purpose for being isn't to become an ancestor or to fulfill your destiny. Your purpose for being is to praise an imaginary cracker on a stick, an imaginary white boy on a stick, who I like to call a Bruni Chinchinga. So that's literally he wants to be praised. He wants to be acknowledged. All these different things. I remember you told me one time when you were in school, you would never go to. They tried to have you go to pray and to church. And you would stay asleep. You say, "No, I'm not going."
I'm not going.
Until eventually they pour water on you to make you go.
Yes, that was Pope John Secondary School. I was in a seminary school, and I hardly, I just didn't really get the whole vibe of the Christian thing, and I resisted it. So I went through a lot over there. Then when I went to training college, to the same thing. And up to now, I don't think it's my thing, but I'm trying to understand why all black people around the world have shifted to that side, and what we are talking about here
is through deceit. But we can go deeper into that.
I'm looking at it like, okay, you look at all black people around the world now. I think majority of black folks are either Christians or Muslims, and over 500 years of colonization, I see that a lot of our things have been washed down. It's been adulterated. If we want to go back to African spirituality, where most of our people don't know what it is about now, do you think it's relevant for us to go back? Looking at the media power that we don't have, where Western media has so much power, do you think it's relevant for us to go back?
So this is, one of the major things is, my introduction just now, it really goes into what are we going back to. So nowadays when people say spirituality, they're basically trying to find Christian sanity dressed up in kente cloth. You understand?
Yes.
So when we say bobrapa, this is to say to live an ethical and moral life. It means that it's not about going to a church. It's not about one day of the week or, doing confessions. Or it means that every single aspect of your life, from when you get up in the morning to when you go to sleep at night, and even in your dream state when your sum goes about to wrong, that all of that is about living your entire life to fulfill your destiny. Now, again, if we contrast that with the Christian sanity that we're speaking about right now, there's this idea of one thing is sacred and the other thing is secular. So, now you can just focus on the sacred things, and then you try to turn your back on the worldly things, the secular things, as opposed to the idea that there is a bit of onyame in all that exists. That's the kra inside of me. That's called amen. Yeah. If you are born on Thursday, the kra inside of you will be called awo or yao.
Yeah.
So, all of us have this bit of onyame inside of us, as opposed to, onyame is a white man on a cloud somewhere with a magic wand zapping things into existence. It's just completely ridiculous, but that's what people have fallen for. And, when we look at it, I mentioned before, it's done through deceit. So, for example, let's say that you have a pastor or a reverend or a bishop or archbishop or any of these types of things. If you see that they have a huge church, the church is coming because my money, your money, his money, we're all giving him money for him to build the church. But he won't thank us. He will thank the imaginary white man on a stick and say the imaginary white man did it for me. No, literally, we know you got the money.
Jesus did it for me.
Exactly.
But we all know that we contributed.
Exactly. Exactly. So, this is the fraud. It would be, let's imagine that Fraud, yes.
Okay.
Now, imagine that I am someone who tells Anansi stories, right? But you all give me money, and then I'm able to build a spectacular palace. And I say, I thank Kwaku Anansi for doing it for me. But Kwaku Anansi doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
However, I'm thanking Kwaku Anansi because due to the Anansi story, that's how I'm able to build the palace. Yeah. But really, you should be thanking all the people who contributed money for you to do it in the first place.
But the story here is, even though the people are thanking Kwaku Anansi, saying that thank you Kwaku Anansi, and Kwaku Anansi does not exist, the whole thing is, has anybody asked you the question where they said, oh, our ancestors were so powerful, they had all these spiritual systems over here, but for some reason, the slavery was able to take place, they took our people away. So if we were that powerful, how come that we couldn't fight back? And if this imaginary God, this Kwaku Anansi did not exist, but their God sort of was able to defeat us, then do you think that people will actually believe that this African spirituality is something that we really need to go back to? Because they see that it feels like it's not powerful. The white God has conquered us. Where was the black God? Our people were taken away. 12 million, 6 million, whatever numbers were taken away from Africa to the New World. Where was our God?
So this is a very good question. So what we find is that there's something called the primary outcome variable.
The primary outcome variable?
Primary outcome variable.
I'd like to drink some pito on top of that.
Oh, no problem. No problem. So when we say primary outcome variable, it means what is the main factor that is that brings about a given result. So in this particular case, it is what's called potassium nitrate, also known as saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal. Now, what do those three things make? They make gunpowder.
Yeah.
That's the major difference.
Okay.
So it comes down to a question of power. Right. Now, there are a lot of things that we do
so
that...
basically talking about they had the gun...
That's the major, that's the number one factor, right? Okay. And we can abstract from gunpowder specifically to say having the power to bring about, certain things. Because power is about, the ability to accomplish your will, even in the face of those who don't want you to do so, in the face of opposition, you understand? And gunpowder was a major factor in terms of making that happen. Now, actually a couple of days ago, I was looking up that formula for gunpowder and how the Chinese were able to get it from compost piles, they were able to scrape it, and they were actually looking for a recipe for immortality. And they had the idea that if we do this, put these things together, and then it can be used as a medicine in order to accomplish immortality. But they realized that this has a reactive factor that is able to explode. So, they started doing things like hand cannons, like, fire lances, and these things which were precursors to modern day firearms, as we see it now. It still has, non-weapon uses such as fireworks and so forth and so on. But that was the number one factor. as far as that goes.
Yeah.
And you also had a case where
so gunpowder is one, but then even in recent times,
power.
Okay,
Power is the number one outcome factor.
Okay.
And the other side is that we moved away from seeing ourselves all as black people as we used to do in classical times, say 4,000 and 5,000 years ago,
Okay.
to the fragmentary identities. So it's a bit anachronistic. When I say anachronistic, it means that the sequence doesn't make sense. It's ahistorical. It doesn't fit in.
Okay,
in
that's
terms
not
of-
fitting.
So when we say, oh yes, we did this, or we were conquered, or we and our and so forth, we didn't see ourselves as a we, and we can see this very clearly in modern day Ghana right now, that Eves don't see themselves as Asantes,
Okay.
and Asantes don't see themselves as Eves, and they don't like each other.
Okay.
How do I know this? I have students at the University of Ghana who've told me, oh, I wanted to marry this Ewe sister, and my parents say, you would never bring an Ewe into this household.
Yeah,
Look at the mentality.
Yeah.
Now, what ends up happening is what's often referred to as the gun slave cycle, where here you have, and I'll just use this as an example, you have Eves on this side and you have Asantes on this side.
Yeah.
What they will say is, here, take these guns on credit, pay me back not in cash, but pay me back in your enemy.
Okay.
Those areas over there,
Yeah.
they'll do the same thing to Asantes. They'll say, here are some guns on credit.
Yeah.
Don't pay me back in cash, gold, anything. Pay me back in your enemy's people, over there. So now it becomes a thing where the white people are laughing all the way to the bank because you don't see that, look, we're all black people at the end of the day.
Okay.
If we didn't have that realization, the Berlin Conference should have told us that this person who I signed the Treaty of Boutre with, these people who I thought was my trading partner, why didn't they invite a single black person to the Berlin Conference?
Yeah, I think the reason why I went this route is for the fact that, even in recent times, when you go on YouTube or TikTok, you see some people saying that, they went for medicine for Ghana. And I saw a guy who went for this herbal medicine for Ghana. And then after eating the portion, he was shot and nothing happened to him. So we still have this idea that yes, this guy probably have the gun power, but we have a spiritual power that will defy the gun. And I still see that people go with that. Where I come from, there is this group of people who just generally the voter reading, there's Koko people, and they play with a knife. They use a knife on their body and all that. And those magical moments when I see those things come to me that, so we had this sort of power and we could not fight, and all our people were just taken away like that. That was why I asked the question, because if we're gonna go back to African spirituality, I think we need to go back to take a lot of things to be able to empower ourselves. So yes, we might not be together as one group of black people, or we see ourselves together. But even as individuals, didn't we have powers that could stop the enemy a little bit?
So this is the thing, is that we're fighting amongst each other. So if you have one people who have the power to stop bullets, they're fighting against other people who also have powers to stop bullets, and they're killing each other, and they're fighting each other, they're stabbing each other. It's really not the white people who are doing it. It's the fact that we don't see ourselves as one people. So now we're doing these things against each other. But I'll bring up another thing in what was at that time called Tanganyika, which was at that time under the Germans, right? So
present-day Tanzania,
Tanzania,
Yeah.
which is Tanganyika and Zanzibar, the name has been combined in a portmanteau of the two. Now you have what was called the Maji Maji Rebellion, and in this case the Germans were actually there on the ground as they were in Namibia, where they implemented the first concentration camps and the first extermination order, von Trotha's extermination order. As many people know about the so-called Jewish Holocaust and so forth and so on, but they aren't aware that the Germans implemented the concentration camps in Namibia long before they did so in what would later, and that was under the Kaiser, long before they did so in World War II. So we're talking about before World War I going into there. And now World War II, you're talking about a good 30, couple of decades after the fact. But again, the Germans were actually on the ground in both Namibia and then Tanganyika. And they had what was called the Maji Maji Rebellion. Now, Maji is the word for water, right, in the language there. And what happened was you had a indigenous spiritualist who said, all you have to do is, use this water. And, this is a special water that's been blessed and so forth and so on. And if you use this, you'll be able to, defeat the Germans. their bullets will turn into water, so forth and so on.
Okay.
So everyone thought that, this is some concoction that was going to do something.
Yeah.
However, the Germans had machine guns, and what they did is they mowed down the people by the hundreds and by the thousands, and the people were saying the magic is a lie. The magic is a lie. Now, this is a thing. There's an aspect to warfare which relates to psychological warfare, which is in the sense that if we are similarly armed, right, and this we can go deeper into military theory, but the idea is that if we're similarly armed, I have bows and arrows, you have bows and arrows.
Zo TV talking points. Do not change the dial. Stay tuned.